One of the interesting things about talking about a long-running series like Tower of God is that there can be a lot of fans with completely different perspectives and expectations for any adaptation that gets made. Some people may be longtime readers who are incredibly invested in the story and judge an anime by how well it adapts material they already know and love. Some might be casual fans of the manhwa but aren't completely caught up or no longer read it, and a lot of people might be new fans that watch the anime without any knowledge of the source material. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I think my perspective as one of those fans who discovered Tower of God through its adaptation is important to keep in mind when I talk about it. I decided I would make this video without reading any of the manhwa, even the parts that the anime has already covered, because I think that there are a lot of people in that position. Also, I enjoy hearing the perspectives of people who are beginning to watch a show that I've already seen, so I figured some people who are big fans of Tower of God might enjoy listening to someone speculate about things that may or may not happen later in the series. This video is just a way for me to share what I thought about the first season of Tower of God. I feel like it's a bit too unfocused to be called a review, so I'm just calling it a discussion instead, but I'm going to be covering a lot of things because I have a lot of thoughts on this anime. I'll be spoiling everything in the first season, so if you haven't seen the show, this is your chance to leave. I highly recommend watching it, and if you're at all interested in the premise, I would at least give the first 4 episodes a try. Episode 4 is where I think the show really starts to come together, so if you're still not enjoying it by that point, it may not be for you. Personally, I really enjoyed Tower of God. In many ways, the show feels like it was made for me, but I can tell that a lot of what I absolutely adored about the anime might turn a lot of people away. In order to explain what I mean, I want to first talk about the basic premise of the show and how it presents information, especially near the beginning. The world of Tower of God exists entirely within the tower itself. Most people live in the outer tower, and a select few are chosen to climb the inner tower. The first season has the main character Bomb, as well as a lot of other characters taking tests in order to earn the right to climb the tower. Everyone has their own reason for climbing, but Bomb is unique. He doesn't want anything at the top of the tower, all he wants is to see Rachel, who left him behind in order to climb. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you've seen the show, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time summarizing the plot. My point in giving such a basic summary is that there aren't that many more big details that the audience is given during the first season. We learn about why characters are climbing the tower, we learn about the magical power of Shinzu, and a little about King Zahad and his princesses, but there's so much that just isn't explained. Every time the audience is given new information, it's the bare minimum needed to understand the story or the motivations of the characters. We're shown that before meeting head-on, Bomb and Rachel lived in a cave, and that's basically it. Bomb has lost his memories, so it makes sense that how he got there wouldn't be explained, but in most shows you would at least get some explanation of where Rachel came from, or some sort of picture of what their life in the cave was like. When it's explained that there's an inner tower and an outer tower, there's no real explanation of what life in the outer tower is like, or how people are chosen to take the tests. Every character's backstory is like this too. I know that Kun was betrayed by the woman he loved, and because of it he was cast out from his family and exiled, but there's no real picture given of what his life was like or what the actual rules and customs of his family are that forced him into exile. In another anime, Kun's backstory would probably have an entire episode dedicated to it, and to be fair, I'm sure more will be revealed later on, but I think the point still stands. It's the same with characters like Ho, Serena, and Endorsey. The information required to give you a picture of their motivations is given, but not much specific information about what happened to them in the past. Understanding doesn't come easily in Tower of God. It forces you to draw your own conclusions and theorize about things that may never be fully explained, or at the very least not for a long time. I'm a huge fan of this style of storytelling, but I can see why for some people it makes it difficult to care about the characters and events that occur. If everything is too muddled and someone can't even really understand what is going on or why anything is happening, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that they aren't enjoying themselves. I think it becomes less of a problem the further into the series you get, because once the major characters are introduced, the way they interact with the tests and each other is very engaging even if the mysteries of the tower don't interest you. but I was satisfied the whole way through because of the incredible sense of mystery and scale that the series is able to create. I love mysteries and I like making theories and guessing what is going to happen next, so the way Tower of God's story is told is perfect for me. Although the mystery was enough to keep me engaged for the first couple episodes, I do think things got significantly better once the Crown game started, because the tests become a lot more interesting and a lot of great side characters start getting more screen time. The Crown game also has some of the better action that the show has to offer. I don't think the first season of Tower of God is extremely action focused, and there are no mind blowing fight scenes, although one of the few things I have heard about the manhwa is that there are a lot of incredible fights that happen later in the series. Although I think the action was enjoyable enough, it's definitely one area that I would love to see a lot of improvement. I really enjoyed the Crown game because the action was interesting, but it also showed a lot about the characters. It showed how easy it is for Anak to lose her temper, and how clever and cunning Kun can be when he truly wants to win. I also really enjoyed the test where the characters play tag against a ranker because of the unique premise which allows all the characters to use their abilities to the fullest. The only problem I have with the action, if you even want to call it a problem, is that there was never that moment that I often have watching shows with great action where I was just in awe of what happened. I'm somewhat hopeful that because this scene is basically just a setup for the real adventure through the tower, that there's going to be a lot of awesome fight scenes later on. I will say that one of my biggest concerns when thinking about the series long term is whether Shinzu is a flexible and interesting enough power system to make fights unique while maintaining consistency for a long running series like this one. I feel like although we've learned what Shinzu is and some basic applications of it, there are no real rules in place for how and what it can be used for. You see people like Bomb and Laure fire it out as orbs, and Anak uses Shinzu to boost her physical strength, but there aren't a lot of parameters. And on the one hand, that can definitely lead to a lot of surprising outcomes and new uses for Shinzu, but if it's not properly defined, I feel like at some point constantly introducing new Shinzu powers will begin to feel cheap. I suppose this is in some way just a personal preference, but I strongly believe the best power systems are the kind where you know the rules beforehand, but they're flexible enough that a huge variation of interesting and unique powers can create cool scenarios and fight scenes. Once again, just my opinion, but I think the absolute king of power systems is Nen from Hunter x Hunter, and no other anime I've seen has even come close to matching it. Nen has guiding principles that define it, as well as a risk versus reward system in place where greater power can be obtained by setting restrictions and making sacrifices. But those guiding principles are so loose that every power is an extension of the user's personality, and there is so much room to have creative, powerful abilities. Obviously, I don't think Tower of God should just copy exactly what Hunter x Hunter does, but I think Shinzu would be a better power system if it had some kind of defined rules and ways for a character's personality to be expressed through their abilities. I also want to talk a little bit about the art style and music of the anime. I have to admit that I don't know very much about art styles and animation quality, so I'll keep this part short and just explain how I felt while watching. Tower of God's art style grew on me the longer the show went. After the first episode, I thought it looked a little bit cheap, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's just because it's fairly unique among the anime that I've watched, but now I don't really think that's a fair assessment. These days, I find the art style rather refreshing because I think it's unique. Rather than looking cheap, I feel like it's sort of, authentic? That's not a very good way to describe it, but I think the art style fits the world of the tower well, and overall I'm glad it looks the way it does. As for the music, I have nothing but positive things to say about it. Even for people who don't like the anime, I feel like the soundtrack is the one thing that basically everyone would enjoy. I would argue that the music is good enough that it makes the anime significantly better, giving more weight to important moments and making even basic action scenes feel like more than they are. A lot of the music just feels like it belongs in the tower. There are tracks that are slow and almost feel otherworldly, enhancing the mystery and foreboding of the tower. One of my favorite examples of how the music can improve a scene is all over the episodes with the final test, the underwater hunt. As Kun and the gang try to protect Bomb and Rachel, the music perfectly reflects how everything slowly starts to go wrong. In the first episode, it feels like it's slowly building as Endorsi is captured and Anak is stabbed by Cotton Candy Dude. In the second episode, the music becomes almost triumphant as Bomb defeats the bull and the characters have finally finished their last trial, only to cut out entirely when Rachel betrays Bomb. There are plenty of other moments like this that are made better by the addition of the music, and I'm excited to listen to whatever Kevin Penkin does next. Next, I want to talk about a couple of the characters in Tower of God. I was really impressed with how unique and interesting the side characters were. Considering the first season was only 13 episodes, it's kind of incredible that so many characters had their personalities and motivations clearly defined, and had moments to shine throughout the season. Part of that can probably be attributed to the fact that the backstories of major characters like Coonan and Dorsey are told with such minimal information, saving time while still giving a satisfactory explanation of why they are the way that they are. Regardless, I still think it's impressive, and I think the writing deserves a lot of credit for making them memorable. I'll give a couple of examples of characters that I think are interesting and worth talking about, starting with my favorite character, Coon. I find Coon's character so interesting, and I really like how he's basically the opposite of Bomb in every way. Coon's extremely smart, and he always has a plan, and I love watching it all come together. And every time you realize that Coon is always playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. I mentioned earlier that I like the Crown game a lot, but my favorite Coon moment is when he intentionally loses the game of tag to give Bomb a chance at passing and still fools everyone into believing he tried his hardest to win. He's also extremely untrusting and sees his old self in Bomb's obsession with Rachel. His decision to do everything in his power to ensure Bomb is able to pass the tests makes perfect sense because he desperately wants to keep Bomb from becoming like him. In the third episode, while thinking about how he was betrayed, he basically says, "I'm the only one who needs to feel that way," and it's clear he doesn't want Bomb to become paranoid and untrusting like he is. It's a great character motivation that I think also improves Bomb's character, and it's one of the reasons why Coon is my favorite. Anak and Endorsey have a really interesting relationship that I think was well developed and fits both of their characters. When Endorsey decided she wanted to help Anak climb the tower, it made sense given her personality and her relationship with Anak's mother. As for Anak, I have to admit I did find it a bit odd how she was so obsessed with killing the princesses of Zahad and then pretty much immediately gave up on killing Endorsey after the training exercise. But after the underwater hunt, it makes sense that Anak would be willing to climb the tower with her, considering Endorsey saved her from the cotton candy dude. I do have some concerns about Endorsey's character because every single time she gets into trouble is basically exactly the same. She gets overconfident and then makes a very costly mistake. I get that it's part of her character. She's a very confident person, most likely because of what she had to do to get to this point, but a lot of her scenes feel very repetitive because of it. I mean, they literally used her heel breaking and making her trip twice in a row with the Crown game and the training exercise. Sure, it's a small complaint, but it's something I would really like to see improved in the future. For the next couple characters, I don't have a ton to say about them, so I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly and give my general thoughts on them. Shibisu and Rak are both hilarious characters, and I really like their personalities. Neither of them have really had any big story moments or had their backstories explained, so I'm excited to learn more about them in the future, especially Rak. I'm glad Serena was a character in the show, even though as far as I can tell she's gone for good. Her story was very interesting, and I thought she had a nice little character arc. Her conversation with Ho about how she couldn't bring herself to kill people she likes in order to climb the tower added a lot to her character, and I like that it seems like she gets to have some semblance of a happy ending in the cruel world of the tower. I have mixed feelings about Ho's character. On the one hand, I get that he was insecure about Bomb and incredibly worried that he was going to fail the test, but at the same time, it seems odd to me that he was willing to just do whatever a random note told him, and then he acts so surprised when things don't go perfectly his way. Regardless, his death was a good display of the cruelty that comes from climbing the tower, and I thought it was handled well. Ho never gets redeemed. We understand his actions, but his dying words weren't an apology or anything. He just says that he hated Bomb, and I think that was a good decision. Finally, I found myself very intrigued by all of the rankers that were running the tests. Han Sung-yu was particularly interesting because he seems like he knows so much more than every other character, and pretty much everything went exactly the way he wanted it. I'm really curious to know why he wanted Bomb to be separated from everyone else, and who helped him gain all this information, because he's seen talking to someone else at the end of the series. Maybe it was Head-On, or maybe it was some character I haven't met yet. Either way, it was very intriguing. I'm also more interested now in Leroro and Quant, considering they're going to be climbing the tower to try and figure out what's going on, so I'm definitely expecting them to show up later. You may have noticed that I haven't talked about two very important characters yet, Bomb and Rachel. I wanted to talk about them together and also talk about the ending of Season 1. The ending is extremely important because, in my view, it's what makes the characters of Bomb and Rachel actually work. When talking to some of my friends that started watching the show, the biggest complaint I heard is that Bomb just isn't an interesting character, that he's one-dimensional and naive to a fault. Although I don't know for sure, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who watch the anime felt the same way. I understand this view, and I partially agree with it, but I still want to try and defend Bomb's character. Bomb is incredibly naive, and his character doesn't change that much in the first season, so you could consider him one-dimensional, but I don't think that makes him uninteresting. When you take into account his impact on the other characters, his role as a sort of foil to Rachel, and the ending, I think there's a lot more depth to his character than just a naive kid with a heart of gold. At the start of the series, Bomb doesn't care about anything except finding Rachel. He's also a blank slate in the sense that he doesn't know anything about the tower. I think this is great because it helps make necessary exposition less forced. The audience needs to know common information about the tower that is known by basically every character, so by having someone like Bomb who doesn't know anything, it gives a reason for the characters to explain it, in turn helping the audience. Admittedly, I found this to be a bit annoying after a while, and I think it takes too long for Bomb to become anything more than just this ignorant kid. What starts to make his character more interesting in the earlier episodes is how he changes the people around him. It seems clear that to even have a chance of making it into the tower, you have to be willing to make sacrifices and hurt other people. But Bomb is different. He's unrelentingly kind and goes out of his way to be friends with everyone he can, and in return, he changes those people. One of my favorite moments is when Kun truly decides to help Bomb make it to the top of the tower. While reflecting on his own past betrayal, he says something about how he doesn't want Bomb to ever become like him. Sure, Bomb might not go through a lot of change, but the people around him certainly do, and it's often because of him. Every character at the end of the season, some reluctantly, are willing to inconvenience themselves greatly by taking Rachel to the top of the tower, because of the deep impact Bomb had on them. But just changing the people around him doesn't make him a good character by itself, which is why I also considered Bomb the weakest aspect of the show, until the ending. I've seen quite a few long-running shonen-type animes, and although I love them, most of them have some sort of formula that, at a basic level, most of the story follows. It doesn't mean that there aren't big plot twists or that they're all extremely predictable, but I feel like different arcs often have similar structures. Luffy travels to different islands, encounters a character that he empathizes with, and beats the bad guy while trying to become the Pirate King. Deku alternates between school training and encounters with villains while growing stronger. So when I watch a show like Tower of God that I know is a long-running series, I end up trying to sort of figure out what the flow of the series is. And yet, multiple times during a relatively short 13 episodes, the series defied my expectations and went a completely different direction than what I expected. With the first episode, I thought the series was going to be about Bomb chasing Rachel through the tower, always one step behind her. Then, by the end of the Crown game, Rachel's already there. Bomb has found her. Then, after the events with Ho appear to force Rachel into a wheelchair, I thought the series was going to be about Bomb taking a weakened Rachel through the tower so she could accomplish her dream. And then, the ending changed all of that again when Rachel betrays Bomb and tries to kill him. Now all the other characters are taking Rachel to the top of the tower, and at least temporarily without Bomb. Rachel's trick with the wheelchair made me think that the show was going to portray her in a more sympathetic light, so I was genuinely shocked when she betrayed Bomb, even though there were definitely signs that it was going to happen. It works well as simply being shocking, but it also recontextualizes Bomb and Rachel's relationship by going back in time and retelling everything from Rachel's perspective. In the final episode, I think an added layer of complexity to Bomb's character is revealed through Rachel. In the end, Bomb isn't rewarded for his undying devotion to Rachel. He's punished for it over and over again. And in a way, that drive to find and protect Rachel, which allowed Bomb to make so many powerful allies like Kun, Endorsi, and Anak, ends up being the thing that separates him from Rachel. Rachel's goal to become a star, to be wanted by everyone, can never be reached if Bomb is around. Because Bomb outshines her completely, without even trying to. Bomb was blessed with immense power that even he doesn't understand, while Rachel's incredibly weak and can't even see Shinzu. But because of how much Bomb idolizes Rachel, he can't see her for what she really is. At the end of the season, he still doesn't seem to hate Rachel for what she did to him. I find it kind of funny that Rachel pushes away Bomb, the only person who actually does see her as a star and thinks she's special. But she's so self-centered that she doesn't see it. She only sees Bomb as an obstacle. I don't really have much of a conclusion to this, but I will say that I'm really encouraged by the fact that this is only the beginning of these two characters. The fact that I'm able to say this much about them with what is basically the prologue of the story is, I think, a very good sign for the future. Speaking of the future, I do want to quickly bring up some concerns I have with Bomb. I'll keep this section short because in some ways it's a bit silly to talk about things that I could find the answers to myself by just reading the source material. But even still, I think it's valuable for anyone who has also only seen the anime like me, and the people who are caught up with the series can laugh at me for how wrong or right I am. These aren't necessarily flaws or problems, but I have two main concerns with Bomb. I'm curious to find out if the series is able to address them in the future in a satisfying way. The first is whether Bomb is going to go through any significant character growth and become less one-dimensional. Now, I know I just spent an extremely long time defending Bomb's character, so I probably need to explain myself. I do believe that Bomb's character is incredibly well written and interesting in Season 1. But since Tower of God is a very long-running series, I think in order for him to stay relevant and interesting over a long period of time, something is going to have to change. Based on the ending of Season 1, I'm fairly confident that I won't be disappointed. At the very least, he'll be a lot stronger after being trained, and I think his experience with Rachel will genuinely change him, or at least I hope it will. My other concern is with Bomb's power and how strong he is. At the moment, he kind of exists in a state where his power is basically limitless whenever he needs to protect Rachel. There's the part in the Crown game where he just explodes into Shinzu to protect her, and there's also the part in the tag test where he's able to copy high-level Shinzu techniques after seeing it once. Then, near the end of the series, he's able to defeat the bull by shooting it from the inside. That last one I'm a little bit unsure about what happened, because you can see there's light shooting out from the bull that I think is closer to that orange Shinzu bomb used in the Crown game, but it might just have been some weird animation thing. It's possible that he didn't grow any more powerful while fighting the bull, he was just able to hit it by attacking from the inside. Either way, I still feel like I'm justified in saying that Bomb's power is completely unknown. Big power-ups like what happened in the Crown game are fun if they're used extremely rarely, but I'm worried that all of Bomb's fights are just going to be him getting a random power boost to beat his opponent. The more they do it, the cheaper it's going to feel. The fact that he's being trained and that characters like the Navigator have acknowledged that he's different from others and blessed with immense power is a good sign to me that the author actually has a plan to explain how his power works. He'll probably be a lot stronger in Season 2, and hopefully that means we'll see less random power-ups and more of Bomb overcoming opponents with the skills he already has. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say about Tower of God. It may not have been a perfect anime, but I'm so impressed with all of the interesting mysteries presented, and all of the amazing characters that feel really well developed despite Season 1 being only 13 episodes. I feel like this video ended up being a bit less structured than my game reviews, but I think it worked well. If you've seen Tower of God, let me know what you thought about it. If you like what I said or you think I'm wrong, please let me know. And if anyone that reads the manhwa watches this, all I ask is that you be mindful and avoid spoiling anything that happens past Season 1. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.